Ever since the release of the Titan back in Apocalypse, people have been clamoring for something bigger, something badder, something more awesome. Introducing the Juggernaut, the new Mothership that's being introduced with Stellaris Federations, and unlike its counterparts, this is not a tactical weapon. No, this is a strategic target that needs to be accounted for in every single situation. If the enemy has one, you will want to kill it as soon as possible. If you have it, well, you've got a leg up against the enemy. Let's take a look at the Juggernaut today and see what it does, how it is fitted, and some of the things that you can do with it to be, well, doom to your enemy. First of all, let's take a look at the loadout of the Juggernaut. What kind of fitting does it have? What kind of weapons can you put on this thing? How strong is it? And its special abilities. First of all, very interestingly, it comes with 2 XL weapons. That is the Giga Cannon, the Electrical Cannon, and of course, the Tachyon Lance. No perdition beams here, those are still the territory of the Titans, but still 2 XL weapons is still a significant amount of firepower for you to have. On top of that, the renewed strike craft system within the game allows for carrier-based operations. This is very much a mothership with strike craft. 6 whole bays full of them can be extremely powerful. On top of that, a slew of medium weapons that can be set up with any type of weapon, really. Phase disruptors, plasma cannons, gauss cannons, lasers, and if you have them, null void beams. However, this is not the reason why the Juggernaut is good. Sure, it has the same firepower as 2 battleships, and it's pretty expensive. But what makes it so good that the devs have only allowed you to build one of them within your empire? And that has to do with the defensive auras, or at least the auras in general. There is 5 of them, and each of them have a unique flavor for you to explore. Let's go quickly over them. There is the Strike Command aura. If you are heavily leaning on Strikecraft, and especially in Federations and the 2.6 patch, Strikecraft have been buffed quite significantly. If you have a fleet of battleships with Strikecraft as well as various other support ships, this particular aura, the Strike Command, gives you a plus 20% damage to Strikecraft as well as speed, which means they can close those gaps to the enemy a lot quicker. Right now, Strikecraft will engage from a significantly large range, and on top of that, will have more firepower at their disposal, and they regenerate faster, making Strikecraft a far more interesting choice, far more viable choice even within the game. But let's move on, shall we? There is the Targeting Acquisition Array, the holy grail of long-range alpha striking. Alpha striking, you say, ASpec? Oh yes. Do you want to see an enemy fleet and knock him out with in the first volleys? You can totally do that with the Targeting Acquisition Array, because the ship weapons range will increase by 40%. In this particular case, let's say you have a fleet of battleships, you'll be able to shoot down the enemy at extreme ranges. This 40% bonus on top of what you already have means that any XL weapons will be able to engage way before the enemy does. And on top of that, if you have Titans in your fleet as well, their perdition beams will already start to burn down the enemy at the same time, which is incredibly powerful because the first shot on the field is usually the winning shot, at least as long as the fleet power is equal. Let's put it that way. Then there is the Subspace Amplifier. Subspace Amplifier is a very, very niche role for your Juggernaut. It basically means that your Juggernaut is more of a guerrilla style operational center. So what does it do? It decreases the hyper jump charge time by 40%, as well as the cooldown by 40%, which means that it can jump all over the place fairly quickly. Crap out a couple of corvettes, sent them on their way to harass the enemy and jump to the next system, being completely and totally uncatchable by anybody between that line. As long as you strategically place yourself, nobody will be able to catch you, and you can be an extreme annoyance to the enemy by just jumping around, generating a couple of ships, send them out, destroy them. Especially in combination with the mega shipyard, this is incredibly powerful and a very viable strategy. Let's move on to the ECM emitters. ECM emitters are very similar to some of the modules that we find on star bases at the moment. It is an offensive aura. Basically what it does, it decreases point defense damage as well as fire rate on the enemy ships. This means, once again, if you have a heavy cruiser-based or heavy carrier-based fleet or a lot of missiles, this means that the enemy will be a lot more vulnerable to your attacks. The entire Juggernaut setup is based around strikecraft, and this particular offensive aura does show it. Being able to overcome the enemy's point defense as well as flak is an incredibly strong way to make mincemeat of large amounts of smaller ships. If the enemy is fielding a lot of cruisers, if the enemy is fielding a lot of destroyers or corvettes, you'll be able to grind them up extremely quickly using the ECM emitters. Then finally, we have the munitions plant. Personally, I would never really use this one because what does it do? It increases orbital bombardment damage by 30%. An extremely niche use within the game itself. Because when are you really going to use orbital bombardment? Well, really only when it comes to Fallen Empire worlds. Sure, you can send your Juggernaut back to the factory, back to the shipyard, have it refitted with the munitions plant and use that instead when it comes down to destroying, say, the core or anything like that, because they have over 4,000 to 5,000 defensive troops sitting on the ground. Well, this is the way you want to play it, because the munitions plant will allow you to bombard the enemy into submission extremely quickly. But then again, you will have your support fleet with you as well, who can dish out the same amount of damage over a longer period of time. And especially once you start bombarding enemy capital worlds, which are usually the most defended ones, well, then you don't really need to start worrying about their capital fleets anymore, because they will most likely be annihilated already. So how does this all work? What is a good way of dealing with the Juggernaut, or at least using the Juggernaut? Thankfully, I've got this save game over here, and we're quickly going to jump into our station here and quickly upgrade it to the max, because we will need a Citadel size, or at least a Citadel size, because we will need a Citadel size Star Fortress, and we will need the following: the Colossal Assembly Yards, which will allow us to build what we want. So let's quickly dive in, go to the shipyard, and build ourselves a Juggernaut. There it is. The Juggernaut is now online and ready to go. So let's take a closer look at this here bad boy. There it is. We are running with the lithoids set this time around, and it is in fact gorgeous. I do love the lithoids look of the Juggernaut. It is absolutely sensational, especially with this here color scheme. But let's say that we are at war, which we are. We are currently at the war with the Khan. Yes, this is the Khan. He has taken over a significant chunk of the galaxy. So how are we going to deal with this scenario? Well, we can just jump in, and let's say that we jump into the Singularity system over here. And on top of that, we are going to send in a couple of support craft, because once again, the Juggernaut should never be left by itself. The Juggernaut itself is a very, very large target that cannot be left by itself. So let's say right here, we got ourselves a Juggernaut. It's built, it's engaging the enemy at the moment. So we're going to need to bring out a couple of corvettes if we can. So we're just going to build a couple of corvettes here. They're going to come off the factory line relatively quickly. And there they are, and they're here. And we can basically instantly say, hey, corvettes, go and engage a couple of targets over here, or jump to the next system. In the meantime, if we have the hyper jump reduction modifier or aura on our ships, we can instantly say, time to jump to the next system because we're going to jump over here. And the enemy won't be able to catch us because there are so many systems that are around that the enemy simply will not find us, or at least will not be able to catch up to us. Very cool stuff. The build system here is incredibly solid. We can build both the science ships or colony ships and construction ships. We are basically a full-on mothership within our empire, completely autonomous and being able to engage any enemy with our support fleet. Now, right now, the Juggernaut in this particular case has 19k fleet power. It really depends on your ship loadout. It can go up to 60 in some cases, I have seen. Of course, with repeatables, it can go as high as you want. So yeah, the Juggernaut, the latest addition to the ship pool within Stellaris. It's extremely exciting to see a new type of ship joining us within the game. Sadly, you will need to research all the way up to Titans in order to get access to this type of ship, but in all honesty, it makes perfect sense. I want to thank my patrons for making this video possible. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be making videos like this, so thank you so much for being so supportive. If you want to get involved with the Patreon, there is a link below in the description. On top of that, if you like what you're seeing here today, there's also a link in the description below that will take you to the Paradox store where you can buy Federations pretty much right now. And once you do so, all of the proceeds will go straight to Paradox rather than on Steam, where you would basically give 30% to Steam. On top of that, I will get a cut of this as well, which is nice. You will get a Steam key, it's by itself, as well as a Paradox key, so it's a win-win situation. Anyway, we're gonna leave it off here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves and build those Juggernauts. The Juggernaut is mother.